I think it's important to speak out. I'm someone that's always there for dialogue. I'm not here to say anything hateful. This is the reality we feel. I think we have to mend bridges. I think we have to build bridges also. And people say it's courageous, but for me, I feel that this is the only thing I could do in this circumstance. I feel like I have to do something about it.
Sioniste, tueur d'enfants, n'a pas sa place parmi nous. C'est tout simplement un corps étranger qui ronge la région de l'intérieur tel un cancer.
Hello everyone, I'm Alexa Lavoie for Ribbon News, and today we are speaking with Dr. Lior Bibas, cardiologist and intensivist at Pierre Boucher Community Hospital. He is part of the Jewish community and was born in Montreal. Recently, Dr. Bibas took to X, formerly Twitter, to share a series of posts explaining its background and addressing the alarming situation we have been witnessing in the streets of Montreal for over 14 months now. In just 2 days, we have seen vandalism, assault, hate speech targeting Jews, and even a now former second cup franchisee at the Jewish General Hospital performing a Nazi salute and calling for the final solution.
Final solution is coming your way. The final solution. You know what the final solution is?
Dr. Bibas, before addressing these recent events and the deteriorating situation in Montreal, can you share what the Jewish community experience has been over these 14 months?
So for us, the situation changed dramatically after the events of October 7th. And from the next day, we saw gatherings and protests that were against Israel and in support even of the atrocities of the October 7th. And these have definitely spilled over into our community. So we've had to heighten security in every aspect. So our schools, our synagogues, our gatherings, we have to heighten security. Many of our schools were shot out. We had Molotov cocktails thrown at even some of our synagogues. There's been a lot of threats going on. And also we saw our city that completely is running into chaos. I don't even recognize it anymore. This is not the city I feel that I grew up in, that I could raise my children in. We have weekly, sometimes more than weekly manifestations that seem to always turn into hate. The most physically violent ones were last Friday, but since October 7th, we've had countless amount of manifestations that have resulted in hate speech, in antisemitism, and intimidation and harassment.
Can you explain, because it seems that the anti-Semitism is way more prominent in the province of Quebec, what we have seen so far. What can be the root cause of that?
So obviously I live in Quebec, so I could only experience what's happening here. When I speak to my physician colleagues in Ontario, for example, they feel that it's the worst there also. So I think you have an issue in these major cities where you have maybe a clash of different values. I think that, I understand that there's suffering in the Middle East and some people are attached differently to the situation in the Middle East, but I don't find these gatherings lead to any form of peace or conflict resolution. I actually think they lead to a worsening of the situation. They actually import a conflict that's happening in the Middle East over here and have creating tensions and have really made Montreal an unrecognizable city. And honestly, it's an embarrassment from an international perspective. I got to the point where my family in Israel that's getting rockets under is telling me, are you okay in Montreal? So I'm not sure if it's worse in Montreal. We're also seeing a lot of these things in the States. So things are definitely bad in Montreal. Instead of comparing, I think we have to find out why it's bad here and try to get some solutions.
Another thing that I want to discuss is like we are now seeing individuals being emboldened by the weak police response. People openly advocating for terrorists, chanting from the river to the sea, some using smoke bomb, dressing like suicide bombers and Hamas supporters, and no one seems to be doing anything about it. And what is your reactions to this?
Well, it's totally unacceptable. I mean, there's a right to peaceful protest, but there's nothing peaceful about these protests. The people wear masks. I don't think that's right to wear masks. If you're so open about your cause and not hateful, then you shouldn't be embarrassed to show yourself. People are wearing masks. People are calling out Jews racists for the past 14 months. We've had encampments at McGill that have been disgusting and vile and have made the environment for Jewish students completely unbearable and untenable even. And I think what we're seeing is the reason why we're seeing a deterioration in the situation is because the lack of law and order in Montreal. I think there needs to be laws put in place. I know there are laws in place, but they need to be applied. It doesn't make sense on Friday with everything that we saw on TV that only 3 arrests were made. In my opinion, I'm not a police officer, but I'm sure there was room to arrest much more people. And you know what? Our standing on the international stage is just going to get worse and worse. And we need to stand together for our common values and for the city that a lot of us used to know and that is completely unrecognizable today.
I want to have your thoughts also regarding, we saw politicians taking to X or doing statement, condemning and not doing concrete action, severe consequences for the people who are breaking the law repeatedly, who are spewing anti-Semitic rhetorics in the middle of the street. What would you want to see happening regarding not only our politicians, but also the law enforcement right now?
So I definitely, I can speak for myself, but I could speak on behalf of the community, which generally feels abandoned by the municipal and the federal government. I think, I understand people tweet when things happen and, Twitter is a great tool, but we need more than a good tweet. We need more than a tweet of support. We need action. We need a change. And I actually think we need to start by recognizing that this is a serious issue. And I have to say that that's not something the Jewish community feels. We feel that it's still not recognized as a serious issue. And without it being recognized and by all forms of government, we cannot move forward with finding solutions and how to tackle it head on.
Mm-hmm. What was your reaction when you saw that some police officer have asked recently a rabbi to just move on and go away from the anti-Israel protest that was going on in the street? We saw also my boss, Ezra Liban, just because he's Jewish, he had been arrested because he didn't want to move because it was apparently a provocation to this crowd. What was your reaction when you saw that the police not asking the crowd to be tolerant, asking the Jewish person to leave the premises?
Yeah, so I was completely disgusted when I saw that, especially what happened with the rabbi downtown in Montreal. The absurdity that a rabbi or any Jew that wears a sign to be visibly Jewish is a sign of provocation shows the inversion of reality that we're living by. In no way should a peaceful sign of religion be seen as a sign of aggression, especially in the context where signs of aggression are seen here on a daily basis. And I think, I don't want to go blame the police officers because in our community, we've had a lot of events where police officers had to escort us, had to support us, had to be there, and they've always been extremely supportive. But I'm wondering if this comes from what they're being told up above and if the right leadership has the right ideas in order to tackle what's going on in Montreal.
We are seeing now some Jewish people from the community saying, I don't want to wear my David Star. I might need to leave the province of Quebec because I don't feel safe anymore. Is it something that you personally feel or maybe other people around you are feeling?
So I'm not considering leaving on a personal basis. Are a lot of people talking about it? Yes, definitely people are talking about it. People I think most people will say things are okay now with everything going on. Even despite all that, we still have it pretty good in Montreal. Montreal is an amazing place to raise a family. We have an amazing Jewish community here. But when you have children, you're trying to think, well, what's the best place for them to be their best self, to grow up, to be happy, to be proud of who they are. And it's hard to believe that Montreal is the best place for what we're seeing today.
Mm-hmm. Do you believe that there is a two-tier policing? Let me explain. We saw recently a woman doing a Nazi salute, calling for the final solution. We know what final solution mean. So far, we didn't hear that there is some charges or any accusation against that person. We had Adil Sharkawi calling Allah to kill the Zionists, and the prosecutor finally didn't press charge against him. We saw clearly a blatant anti-Semitism happening in our streets, and no one is imposing any consequences for those people who are actually breaking the law.
Yeah, that's a serious issue. We have laws for this, and they should be applied. There's no reason for them not to be applied. The Jewish community has been in Quebec since the 18th century. We've contributed in any way. We're part of the Quebec and the Canadian fabric. And, we should be protected the same way as anyone is. There's no reason for Jews not to be as protected. And, today anti-Semitism really woke up as anti-Zionism. And I just want to be very clear. If you want to criticize the actions of Israeli policy and the way we criticize policy, Canadian policy, Quebec policy on a regular basis, that's totally fine. But when you're calling out in the street for the delegitimization of a country, the ethnocide of a people, the destruction of the only Jewish nation state, that's anti-Semitism and that's hate speech. And it should be seen as a viable threat, because we've also seen these threats have led to physical and actual either destruction of property or physical violence.
Do you think that the school system have a little bit contributed to this? Because we see that right now, a lot of students are taking to the street who are also contributing to support terrorist organizations, calling them the resistance. Do you think it's kind of emerged from a bit the school system?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure. I do think that, education is one of the solutions. Whether education needs to start at the university level or way before that in order to prevent it happening later on in these students' life, I think we need to have the answer to these questions. But again, before talking about solutions, I feel we still haven't said we have a serious problem. Let's sit down and figure out what's going on so that we could have solutions to tackle.
Do you have any concern if nothing changed and if the law is not getting more harsh and stricter? Do you have concern for the future?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely have concerns. As a Jew, I have concerns. But I would even say, if things continue to get worse, it's not just the Jews that are going to be affected. It's going to be any well-meaning Canadian and Quebecois that's going to be impacted by this. What starts with Jews doesn't end with Jews. We've seen that historically. Anti-Semitism has always been very insidious. It gets bad, and once you notice how bad it is, it's hard to see how it got this bad. And I think that it's not, understandably, Jews are very concerned, but I think most Canadians and Quebecers need to see that this is a serious issue, and it will impact the entirety of the population and not just the Jews.
I will finish with that. You know that by speaking out, you might face, all kind of threat. Did you receive already some threat?
I received a few Twitter threats that, in my opinion, are not so serious. I think it's important to speak out. I'm someone that's always there for dialogue. I'm not here to say anything hateful. This is the reality we feel. I think we have to mend bridges. I think we have to build bridges also. And people say it's courageous, but for me, I feel that this is the only thing I could do in this circumstance. I feel like I have to do something about it.
So we have a petition online. If you want to sign it to show your support to the Jewish community, it's canadastandwithisrael.com. You can sign it, you can share it, and make sure that you are supporting the Jewish community.